Some news. News and graphs. Renewables are now the world's largest source of electricity. This is, it's a good thing. It's good to see this. Twice, it's doubled in 20 years, the global renewable share. And overall 34% is from renewables. That number is nearly 50% in the EU. It's about a quarter in the US, a quarter in India, and nearly 40% in China. So China rapidly catching up with everyone. But yeah, renewables have overtaken coal, which is very good news. More news in graphs. Zach Bond here from Clean Cities pointing out that diesel vans are on the rapid rise thanks to everyone getting their treats instantly into their hands. There are more than 100,000 diesel vans for the first time registered by businesses on London's streets. This is not good, not least for NOx pollution. This needs to change. There need to be much stricter rules about enabling this with a zero emission zone for freight specifically. This is really not good. Some good news though. A good thing released onto the world, the Rural Design Guide from Active Travel England. We will be page turning this for a bonus episode in a week or two. So well worth coming in and joining us for that. Yes, the approach to level crossing collisions is working well. Well, remember we talked about Brightline and we said that it is appalling that Brightline were killing so many people and that it is not the responsibility of those being killed to be keeping safe. It is the railway's responsibility to keep those people safe. And people shouted at me for this. They said, you're an idiot, you're wrong. Well, Brightline have spent $45 million on improving safety, and trespassing incidents are down by 30%, improving safety quite substantially at the 327 grade crossings between Miami and Cocoa. So I would describe that over a year, that is the same period in 2025, I would describe that as a very obvious benefit of actually investing in safety from the infrastructure side, suggesting that it absolutely is our responsibility as a railway to keep people next to us safe. Talking about personal responsibility and how it doesn't make any sense. Yes, the approach to bridge strikes is working well. Yeah, this is a major bridge strike near Rugby on the West Coast Main Line that closed the line, caused severe damage. As you can see from this pretty shocking image, there was a lot of people who I came in and said, our institutional approach to dealing with this, which is to kind of focus on insurers and drivers, is clearly not working. We need to be removing and threatening to remove the license of operators, of the license of haulage companies, and indeed potentially even their customers, so the pressure comes right from the top should this sort of thing happen. So it's not, oh, you'll be charged a fine. It is, you will have if this happens and you have your brand on the side of the truck, and we're not talking about wet or dry leasing, we are talking about the ownership. And it doesn't matter if it's for lease drivers, they are still drivers with the company name at the top of their paycheck. Then they will lose their license to operate. Whether you have 3 strikes or out, or just you do this once, you're off the grid. This needs to be it needs to be corporate and organizational target, not targeting drivers, and people say, well, it's the driver's fault. No, it's not. Just as there is never a case of driver error uniquely on the railways, then it's the same for HGV drivers who are being fatigued. If they've made a mistake, then it's because of fatigue, it's because of poor training, it's because of competency, or it's because of poor hiring practices of someone who shouldn't be a driver in the first place. It is an organizational problem, because ultimately it's the safety of the railway that is under threat. It's not just good enough to say, well, it's individual drivers and we should penalize accordingly. The reality is that it's not working. You can't say that's the way to do it because the number of bridge strikes is increasing. It's not working. Yes, the approach to fare evasion is working well. Look, the government is installing upgraded ticket barriers across the country, in theory, with new barriers, new high sort of New York subway style barriers being installed at High Wycombe Station, not Chiltern Railways network. And GBR, we're being threatened with more of these being rolled out. Well, firstly, is immediately the thing I'm thinking of is, what about families who have all their tickets on a phone and they need to pass that mobile phone between one person to the other? So instantly, this is making the railway a more hostile place for passengers. This is the wrong approach. Now, the government is saying, well, yeah, we've got, £33.5 million for ticket gates because the railway loses $400 million a year from fare dodging. And there are going to be 18 stations that are getting, within that first phase of installation. My argument would be, why are people fare dodging? Maybe tackle that problem, because anything else is just going to be bypassed a different way. People will find different ways to do this bypassing. And what you're doing is, for a small number of people, you're penalising absolutely everyone and making their experience worse. This is the opposite to the correct approach for fare evasion. My logic is, you swallow it until you make the society more, one where people don't feel that they have to fare dodge. Whether that's because fares are completely ridiculous, whether it's because hardship in the country is such that people who have to use the railways are trying to avoid doing so. And maybe if you had more staff on stations, you wouldn't need this to happen because there would be more visible staff and therefore people would be less inclined to be doing fare evasion. Yeah, so I strongly not in favor of this. This seems crazy. But no. The way we have to do this, the approach we're taking, well, there's no better summary than...
Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Talking of stations, something interesting has happened, which is that there's some GBR branding, well, not so much the branding, but the GBR model station concept has been rolled out slightly bizarrely in a future TfL station, which puzzles me. This is one on the network. I think it's on the southern network, or the southeastern network, actually. It'd been on the southeastern network, perhaps. Southern. It says southern, the southern branding there. Southern network, which absolutely is ripe for just being absorbed by TfL and becoming an overground station. So it seems a strange choice to me. But there are some things that are really good in here. Go to the Invisit website for more detail. Some accessibility features, decluttering with getting rid of old posters, lots of just general tidying. It's broadly a good idea, but for me, it's strange that they picked this one rather than a Thameslink station that's not going to be transferring quite so rapidly to TfL. But this absolutely is a future TfL station. It seems strange to have chosen this one. I don't know. Anyway, talking GBR, the fragmentation shall continue until morale improves. Yeah, Emily Sullivan doing some very good work. Association of British Commuters, digging through the Railways Bill. And looking at some of the unpleasant detail within it. So, it's arriving in the Lords. It's absolutely vital that peers begin with a serious discussion of the government's approach to public ownership, as Emily puts it. At first glance, the headline change in the Commons last month appears reassuring. A requirement that Great British Railways should be wholly owned by the Crown, creating a protection against private shareholders that cannot be removed except by an Act of Parliament. However, what went unmentioned was that this protection applies only to GBR's parent company, not to the GBR companies expected to perform its main functions. Rather, these have been defined as subsidiaries, entities in which GBR holds a controlling interest, but which may have other shareholders. As long as GBR keeps more than 50% of the voting rights, the remaining shares could be sold off to private investors. This is horrible, for a variety of reasons. Emily points out the effect of this definition is to rewrite the literal meaning of public sector company. Yep, I would agree with that. This is gross, and we should be pointing out and picking on it and highlighting that it's a real problem. I don't want... The whole point is that adding this extra complexity, potentially having PPPs involved and private companies involved, just adds extra stakeholders, makes a real mess. But of course, it also... by the way, infrastructure management and operations functions are going to be subsidiaries within GBR as well, and at a regional basis, doing the same thing, because these separate GBR companies will be allowed to do the same thing, not least because they have to navigate the nasty, scrappy leftovers of the competition-based restrictions from the rail access regulations 2016 that require legal separation of the body responsible for access decisions. So, again, Emily's done solid work on this. It's on Rail website. You can read through it in detail. There's the other things that could be companies are the new GBR ticket retail arm, the cross-network functions currently held by the private sector rail delivery group, central ticketing, Platform 4, the property development, infrastructure property development company, that's a subsidiary of Network Rail, and kind of almost anything else the government decides to split out. You'll notice split. This seems to me to be lots of fragments of stuff that's already fragmented, while the whole point was that we start unfragmenting this stuff. Kind of feels like we're not fixing the problem, lads. Just gonna put it out there.